Alright, gonna do something a little different, not just positionally, where I'll curl up in my normal reading position. Not so much for this one, but it has been in the past. William Faulkner's Sound and the Fury. So I haven't done any kind of literature analysis. I'm not someone who's studied this kind of thing ever in my life. But I figured I needed to talk about this this book in particular for whatever reason. It was on my mind, and I just finished it. I have enjoyed Faulkner when I read him before, but it's a weird sort of thing. The books I read before were from the Snopes family stuff. The Mansion was the final one in it. And I may have read something else of his at an earlier point. And my feeling with those was, wow, there's no real story going on here or anything, but hot damn, the writing is just so fucking beautiful that I can sort of cut off my desire for any sort of narrative. There's something minimally there, but just enjoy feeling it flow across me, for whatever that is. It's like art appreciation, right? I appreciate this. I don't know why. And it's actually really hard to put my fingers on it because, you know, it's entirely an aesthetic thing. Most of the books that I've enjoyed are more in the science fiction and fantasy side of things, although I certainly do enjoy reading fiction that's not, and some nonfiction as well. I take a certain pleasure in that. You can see I was reading the Holy Roman Emperor thing, or Empire book, that covered the whole history of that. I don't know how much I enjoyed it. I had hopes to gain information from it, but I just love to read, and it's one of the few things in life that I can say I actually really enjoy and I feel no guilt about. I could do it forever, but I do feel that, like, I also feel no compunction to read particularly. So, you know, I do a lot of stuff that I don't enjoy anywhere near as much, like playing my games or watching the news constantly or doing my work. There's a lot of stuff in my life that I let slip by too, which if you can see any of my room, you can tell that of it. But anyhow, this is sort of an introduction to something that I don't know if I'm going to do any others ever, but I wanted to take a look at this particular book because it did not meet my expectations of that I had from prior reading of Faulkner. The writing is still beautiful, but there's some weird shit going on in this that I'm trying to wrap my head around, and I thought I'd do that on video. So, this is one of his earlier books. On the back, they say, one of the greatest novels of the 20th century. Okay, I don't know about that. I don't think that he got as much recognition for this as some of the others, and whatever, so unless you want to put all of Faulkner's books way up there. But what's going on in this is that it starts out and you have, at least if you're me, no fucking idea what's going on. You know, part of me kind of wants to just flip into and open with it some of the reading from it. So, I mean, it opens up through the fence between the curling flower spaces. I could see them hitting. They were coming to where the flag was, and I went along the fence. Luster was hunting in the grass by the flower tree. They took the flag out, and they were hitting. Then they put the flag back, and they went to the table, and he hit and the others hit. And then they went on, and I went along the fence. Luster came away from the flower tree, and we went along the fence, and they stopped, and we stopped, and I looked through the fence while Luster was hunting in the grass. Okay, that's the kind of beauty that I'm used to from Faulkner. But as I read through the first few pages, I'm not even sure who the first character is. It may be Benji. The book switches points of view. Now that's something that many books do, right? It's usually pretty obvious whose mind you're in. It's not here. You're constantly trying to puzzle out everything. You don't know who's speaking as the narrator. You don't know if the narrator can be trusted or not. You don't know if the narrator is sane. You don't know if the narrator is mentally there. It's really this very, very odd situation. And so I was left lost. And I mean, I read through the first, I don't know, at least 20 pages or so. Without, and I expect this to happen almost any time I approach Faulkner, without realizing, okay, I just have to enjoy this for the writing, and it'll take me where I want to go. And it kind of does eventually. So what it does is, by visiting various members of this family at various times, and sometimes at various times in given chapters. It's not like a given chapter talks from one point of view at one time at any one thing, and it may not even stick to one character. It's really, really hard to tell where the point of view is and what's going on with it throughout it. Which leaves you with such a disjointed view that, in a sense, so anytime you're reading anything, really, you're trying to transmit information about some situation, real, fictional, or whatever, into your own knowledge base. And you're trying to get some understanding of that. But in this, there's no gotcha kind of situation. It's not like a mystery novel, which, you know, is trying to give you that whodunit experience. It's not really like a, well, what's going to happen? Which is what I'm used to in narratives, which is, okay, so I know the story so far, and I want to know how it's going to turn out, right? It's not got any real twists in it, like the, now I'm losing the term, the untrustworthy narrator. I'm thinking things like Gone Girl here, where, you know, you're getting a story, but you don't know whether or not you can trust the person who's telling it to you, and you're actually getting it from multiple points of view there. That's a book I would like to have done this for as well. You know, the shame of it all is, what I'd love to do, not necessarily with this, with other things that I have, is simply read them to you and do a live reading. And this may actually be old enough that I could. It's so hard to tell how copyright works. So the original copyright to this is 1929, which I think is legitimate, and I could actually read it. I think it's finally slipped into public domain after many, many ugly things. But the copyright of the version I have is 1984, because there are some tiny, tiny little changes, and those are outlined in here. Wording changes, almost insignificant, but that's probably covered by copyright law. And I would have to get a hold of one of the older versions, like the first manuscript, to have any reasonable claim to fair usage. I don't know. On the other hand, I'm not sure that I'd want to read Faulkner aloud. Much as the writing is beautiful, part of the experience is that puzzling along. And of course, what am I going to do? Stop and give my impressions throughout, or something along those lines? That's just going to violate the writing and the beautiful flow. One of the things that I thought with this is that there's a certain degree of stream of consciousness going on in it. And I think there kind of was in the other Faulkner I read as well. And that led me to thinking about certain things. And again, we're going to wander all over the place here. So, because I'm not trained in this and I'm not used to doing this, but I do feel like I have something to suss out with y'all. One of the things I see with stream of consciousness is nobody thinks that way, or at least this somebody don't. It's very much almost trying to give you that trippy type of experience, that kind of experience that you have in a feverish dream or something, rather than how at least I put my words together when I'm streaming my own consciousness. My own consciousness is almost this inner monologue, or even sometimes dialogue, and probably at times a cacophony of different voices. But they're all rational actors, and they're all trying to say something and to bring forward a statement much in the way that one would write or one would speak, not in the way that stream of consciousness presents itself. I've tried it a couple of times. I'm like, well, it's an interesting kind of mechanism, but I really doubt that anybody actually operates that way, unless they're severely, chemically imbalanced at the time. Anyway, so that was that side of it. Each person speaks in their own way, and in their own way is kind of interesting here, because it's all very colloquial. It's all very early 20th century Southerner speak in a lot of ways. So there's a lot of nigger in there, and there's a lot of contractions and misspellings to give more the sound of the word. But it's very beautiful, and it very much gets you into that mindset that you think that Faulkner, who is a Virginian himself, this is written from the point of view of people in Mississippi, though, I think, brings you into this very, very different flow of existence. The way people say things, the things they say aren't necessarily, and are almost never, directed towards easy goals or trying to expose any of the narrative or anything like that. It's all this attempt to capture this very natural sort of speaking, and maybe I just speak unnaturally, which I would not be surprised by, given that when I was teaching classes, I would get feedback back. As far as I can tell, Enrico is speaking English, but I'm not certain. But yeah, there's a certain level of I don't know, just the way they capture the speaking there, and the way they capture that as well within the thoughts of people. Right now I'm not catching something that I like. Let me go. Let's see. This is just at random, really. You locked the back door, he says. I went back and locked it and came back. I suppose you're going to the show tonight, he says. I gave you those passes yesterday, didn't I? Yes, I says. You won't give them back? And again, I says, right? You know, capturing that colloquial. No, no, he says. I just forgot whether I gave them to you or not. No sense in wasting them. Now, these are a couple of shopkeepers, a shop owner and a shopkeeper in there. He locked the door and said goodnight and went on. The sparrows were still rattling away in the trees, but the square was empty except for a few cars. There was a Ford in front of the drugstore, but I didn't even look at it. I know when I've had enough of anything. I don't mind trying to help her, but I know when I've had enough. I guess I could teach Luster to drive it. Then they could chase her all day long if they wanted to, and I could stay home and play with Ben. At the end of the whole story, I have an idea of what happened throughout it all. My best guess is that it's a story of incest between a brother and sister who have a child, and the sister marries someone while she's pregnant, and then, I don't know, stops being married to him but is still getting money from somewhere, and maybe from being a prostitute, and I don't know. And it's just like nothing gets developed completely. You're just left with these echoes of what people say and what they think without a clear line where they spell out what they think. Now, this is where I don't get it. This is where I'm talking about that stream of consciousness type stylism here that I don't do. Like, I go for a walk and I think to myself, and what I'm thinking is this conversation, monologue if you wish, sometimes taken from different points of view, whatever, sometimes with some slight arguments within it, but I do so and I'm exposing it as if I was trying to explain it to someone else while I relive those memories in the exposition. Whereas here, you're just getting this flow, even when people are thinking to themselves, of almost a random jumble of stuff. And the worst comes with the severely mentally disabled guy, where, you know, from his point of view, it's just, and I think that's actually that first portion, which actually is more the actual statements and the things that are put out are more clearly stated. Things like, let's see. Well, what you're getting is other people's conversation, and you're getting stuff almost fully described from his point of view as if he were a mentally capable actor. And then later on, he's just basically drooling and wailing and stuff like that. So clearly he has enough in his internal existence in this story that he's able to recognize most of everything that's going on. He's just unable to communicate it to others. Maybe a very severe autism or whatever. Now, what's interesting, again, like I say, you know, part of the story is about incest. Well, part of the story is also about this kid. Apparently, he did something. He attacked some girl and ends up getting castrated for it, you know? That is never here. The actual incest, if it ever happened, is never really clearly nailed down and never really here. All there are is like stories from the early childhood and then stories from after the facts, or points of view from that. Not even stories, just glimpses into people's minds throughout that. And then as you work your way through this, you start to piece together what the story is, what the narrative may or may not be, based on all of what you get from it. I find it intriguing. I also found it exhausting, and as with the other Faulkner that I read, where the story was much more accessible once I learned to let the words flow over me. It didn't require a hell of a lot of thought to figure out what the story was. It seemed rather inane. But in neither case is the story the point behind it. As far as I can tell, the point behind it is to catch these conversational snippets that are largely unimportant. They're largely just giving you slices of life. It's as though somebody had copied off the silly shit my wife and I would say to each other and left out anything else, and certainly left out any exposition to it, any attempt to try to bring the audience up to speed to any of it. That's up to them. It's like being thrown on a bus. You know, I used to hate this when I'd get on the school bus and I'd hear 6 or 7 conversations at once. And I'd be following all of them, right? And they'd just be this noise, and it would fatigue me so much, and I used to absolutely hate it. It would make me kind of physically ill. But to some extent, I would capture several different conversations and follow the threads of all of them at the same time. But I never thought that there was any kind of connection, or that one should put them all together and try to weave a web from that. Whereas with this, I feel like the only way to get an understanding of what the story might be, and to get away from just the beauty of the words and the way they're expressed and whatnot, is to dig and try to create that interconnectivity. Because this is a conscious act, right? This was written as a story, as a novel of some sort. Anyhow, I don't know what to say about it. I mean, I had my enjoyment of it. My books these days, I found this in one of the little free libraries, either go back to them or they go upstairs and I say, I will reread this. I will reread this. This is going up into that pile. I want to experience this again. Whereas, you know, if I read a Stephen King, which is really good on the narrative and really good at a lot of things and not poorly written, I'd be a lot more iffy about keeping that now. And certainly if I read a bestseller type thing, whatever that might be, it almost certainly would go immediately back into the little boxes. Unfortunately, I'm finding I've picked up a lot of stuff that I want to keep. So that's kind of a sad thing, because I've got a whole bunch of books that I still have to read that I've never read since I moved here. I brought almost nothing from Phoenix other than like a few things that I really liked, and a couple that maybe I wouldn't have brought if I had realized how easily I was going to collect up so many books when I don't have to buy them at all. You know, I'm used to hunting them down at Goodwill and buying them there for $0.25 or whatever, and now it's like $1 if I'm lucky. So it's like this bonanza of, like, you know, so many books available anytime I want one. I can just find one. You know, there is no case of, oh no, I'm running low on books, what am I going to do? On the other hand, I'm running high on books, what am I going to do? Things that I've bought, I may end up passing on. Now, it's weird because when I was young, I collected, you know, everything I liked I kept. And that bar was much lower. Pretty much any science fiction and fantasy I would keep, because I would run and reread them. And all of those pretty much anything that I liked at all went to my first wife, and I got almost none of them back, which is a shame because I think she probably disposed of them eventually. Although, if she kept them, it's fine. Not because, oh God, you kept my books, I love that about you. No, it's because she would not have gotten rid of them at the period when I first knew her, no matter how she got a hold of them. But I know she trimmed her collection down before she moved to Phoenix, which was well before I did. She was already out of there when I got in there. Anyway, that's whatever my babbling about The Sound and the Fury by Faulkner has to give. And I tried to keep some of it on topic, right? Cheers.